Thank you, Nathaniel. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and it's a pleasure to be back at this conference presenting our study on the tonemes of Malieng, a Vietic language. And these are the main parts of our presentation. But please, okay. So just before we start, we would like to acknowledge the Malieng communities for the hospitality and for sharing their language and culture. So our documentation and description project of the language has been underway ever since 2022. And the result we are presenting today is based on our last fieldwork in August 2024. And so Malieng is a Vietic language within the Austroasiatic phylum. And according to Veglis, the Malieng languages comprises 3 dialectal zones. And the one we're addressing today is the one spoken in Quang provinces of Vietnam. And there are discussions about where to put this language into, like, on the Vietic language tree. And so we are adopting that 2023 proposal, which put Malieng and Thabang into one subgroup here. So next we can see in the map that the Malieng community mainly lives in some villages to the west of Ha Tinh and Quang Binh provinces of Vietnam, alongside the border with Laos. And there are these are the locations of those 6 villages, and our field trips took place in the red circled one. So now let's briefly revisit our last year presentation, which served as a prequel to what we're discussing right now. So we last year introduced what we then called the tonal system of Malieng, both phonologically and phonetically. So this system combines several phonetic cues, and for this reason, we are now terminologically referring to each entity in the system as toneme. So, however, there was a setback. We failed to describe a borrowed tonal category, and for this reason, the phonetic and phonological analysis was misleading. So what's new in this year's presentation? At its heart, we are focusing on the tonemes of Malieng and their hypothesized origin, and also fixing the tones of the word list used for the phonetic study. And also, as mentioned, our last analysis was an oversimplification of the borrowed tone. So we are now providing a separate description of the borrowed tonation category, which we're labeling B2V, which stands for B2 from Vietnamese. And alongside, we also attempt to discuss the typological implications of the analysis of Malieng for other Vietic and also mainland Southeast Asian languages. And with that bridge from past to present, let's just turn to the synchronic analysis of the tonemes. And we are using in this research the word lists, which combinations of different onsets, vowels, codas, and tones. And in the recent study, 94 words controlled for these components was used compared to last year, which only had like 50. And they are recorded in the frame sentence, as you can see from the slide. So because not everyone is familiar with the tone convention in Vietic, let me first introduce this. Based on the hypothesis proposed by Odrigo 54, tonogenesis happened first to Proto-Vietic based on the innovation of coders, which conform 3 categories A, B, C. And the voicing contrast of initials later led to a separation of 2 registers, which are high 1 and low 2. And because D is a distinct category only found in checked syllables, so we're not mentioning it here in the recent study. So let's take a look at the F0 results of the tonemes. So we can see here they are distinct by a pitch height and also pitch contour. And there's a clear distinct between A1 and A2, which A1 is a mid rising falling. As you can see, they are colored orange in the graph. So A1 is the mid rising falling and A2 is low falling. And we also didn't find a clear distinction between the tonemes in B and C category. And for these categories, the register opposition is kept mainly by means of vowel quality, which we will show later in a few minutes. And also, according to this result, C1 is unexpectedly lower than C2 for the first half of the progress. And also, B2V has a distinct F0 profile, which shows a consistent contour of falling with a slight rising at the offset. And you may have also recognized the differences in duration between the tonemes. So now we are showing this box chart for better elaboration. So we can see here D1 and D2 are the shortest tones in the whole system. And the C category tones are significantly shorter than the rest in the system. They are only longer than D tones, and this is quite common among Vietic languages as well as some others, because the final fricative has the shortening effect on the preceding vowel, which results in the general shortened duration of the whole syllable. And also B2V, with the one borrowed from Vietnamese, is also shorter than the tonemes in the native B category of the language. So let's now take a closer look at the tone variation. We can see here, like all the tones seems to have a fairly consistent pitch contours over individuals and tokens. So this suggests that this language has already been developing tones. And last year, when we presented the B2 tone, we claimed that there were two variants, but now by dividing them into the native B2 and the borrowed one, we have seen a more consistent contour for these two entities. And speaking of voice quality, we in this study we used 8.1 minus 8.2 as the phonation indicators, which suggests that for higher H1 minus H2, it suggests that there's a breathier phonation, and in contrast for the lower indicator, it suggests a more creakier or more modal phonation. And so based on this, we have made these observations, which A1 and B2 are expectedly audible and breathier than A1 and B2 respectively. And these results is also very audible from the recording. And for the B and C categories, they generally have a tenser voice toward the offset. And B2V, the one borrowed from Vietnamese, is also the tensest tone in the whole system. It shows a creaky voice in the middle of the process. And as I mentioned before, this tonation system preserves the register opposition by means of vowel quality. So we're showing it here, the F1 and F2 trajectory of the tones, and we can see here a clear opening diphthongization in the low register, which turn the vowel R into like ba. And for the vowels E and O, they are diphthongized, they're found diphthongized in both registers. And also the D tones here show the least register conditioned vowel quality difference. So based on these results, we came to the some few preliminary conclusions that in this tonation system, the tonemes are multifocused, which combines pitch height, pitch contour, voice quality, vowel quality, and duration. And also these categories, they utilize the phonetic property quite differently. And among those, vowel quality seems to be the most consistent cue used. And I'm now handling the stage to my colleague, Baro.
Okay, thanks, Min. So we're gonna continue with the phonological analysis, and it's gonna be a diachronic analysis. So I'm going to try to explain our hypothesis on how these tones emerged. So first of all, we assume that Proto-Vietic or Old Malieng were a register language, but not a tonal language. So in this registrogenesis first scenario, register manifested in at least 3 phonetic cues: vowel quality, pitch, and voice quality. And in modern Malieng, as Min was explaining, vowel quality seems the most salient of the contrasts. So the tonemes of Malieng, of modern Malieng, are the ones that you can see in red. So we have 5 tonemes. So we have A1, A2, B, then C, which is arguably developing right now, and the borrowed one, B2V. So we believe that there are 3 different origins for these 5 tonemes. So the first A1 and A2 would have emerged thanks to registrogenesis, which would have caused pitch differences, at least in the A category. Then B and then C would be in a transitional phase towards the vanishing of glottal codas. So this would be like tonogenesis strictly speaking, in the terms of a coda collapsing, coda contrast collapsing, that would trigger the B and the C categories. And then B2V would have emerged as a borrowing, so would have been borrowed from via a language contact from local Vietnamese. So how have these A1 and A2 tones emerged? So this is our hypothesis. This is the registrogenesis model in Southeast Asia. Whereas in the top table you can see a language with a voice opposition for the initial consonants, and in the second stage, so the table below, you can see that the voicing has been collapsed, the contrast, and in compensation, the high register and the low register have emerged. So what has happened with Malieng, if we exemplify this with consonants t and d, is that we have the same consonant, and we have the high and low register, and sorry for these triple dots. And what Malieng has done is that it has transphonologized the register oppositions mainly on vowel quality. So for vowel A, in this case, it's a diphthongization of the vowel. So we have ta and we have ta as the low register. This depends on the vowel, but we're not going into detail into Malieng register. But basically, this is the table summarizing the registrogenetic outcomes for modern Malieng. So we can see in gray that vowel quality is the most salient one, and we say that it's the most salient not because we have done perception studies, but because it affects the whole system. So all the vowel system and all the syllable types from A1 to D2 are affected by vowel quality differences. But we have only found F0 and voice quality differences in the A category for pitch. So A1 is higher than A2, and A2 is significantly lower than A1, but that's it. And then for voice quality, we have found a creaky voice in C1. We have found a breathy voice in A2, and then the B2V, the bird one, also has a creaky voice. So thus, pitch oppositions were arguably existing upon registrogenesis, at least in the A category. We don't know for the others because we don't have a time machine. So the second origin would be for tones B and C, and ongoingly C, because the coda is still preserved in the C category, which would have emerged via tonogenesis. Basically, we understand here tonogenesis as a strict collapse of coda contrasts. So we see here, and sorry for the, it's when we imported these into the Google slides, the tables were a bit then moved. So the classical theory on Southeast Asian tonogenesis is as follows. So we see a registrogenesis first, origin, and then a tonogenesis first origin, and then registrogenesis first. So first three categories emerge, and then they double with the register oppositions. This is the case of Vietnamese, as was described by Austroasiatic 54. So we have seen that this table was made before. So Vietnamese would have these 6 categories plus the 2 non-tonal categories, which are D2 and D1. And then for Malieng, this is how it looks. So basically, we only have a register opposition in terms of tonal opposition in the A category. So you can see the pitch is higher in the A1 than in the A2 category. But B and C, the pitch, the F0 contour is the same for the 2 registers. So I have put in gray here B1 and B2 and C1 and C2. It is because we can observe that maybe in the future these categories will develop, because there are slight differences. They're a bit consistent, but we have described them as belonging to the phonetic realm and not the phonological one for the moment. So we have these 4 native tonal categories: A1, A2, B, and C. And for C, we have said that the final glottal fricative is still preserved in some contexts. So that's why we have put it in italics. So for this developing tones, we are going to show you a minimal pair, a near minimal pair, with a ku, fire, and tu, to rot. And we will see that there are clear differences in vowel quality, also in voice quality, as C1 is a bit quicker, and also in pitch counter and duration. So you can see here the spectrograms of the two words, pronouns via female in the top spectrograms and the male in the bottom one. And we can see, for example, that C2 is longer than C1, and we can see that the vowels, the U of the vowels is quite different. Yeah, we're not going into detail, but it's just to show you some hints of how C1 and C2 different tones would be developing right now. But this is just a hypothesis, and it's just phonetical, as I was saying. And finally, the third origin would be borrowing. So B2V would have been borrowed from local central Vietnamese. So the Vietnamese spoken around the Malieng, so in Quang Binh and Ha Tinh, mostly Quang Binh because the village in Ha Tinh was moved there quite recently. So this term B2V would have been from a Vietnamese variety that has fusioned B2, C1, and C2 tones into a single one, so that we can call it B2C. So borrowings from local Vietnamese that belong to this B2C category would enter Malieng into the B2V category. But the thing is that we are not entirely sure of the origin of the borrowings, because for some words we don't know the cognates. We don't know where they come from. So, for example, take the word "tum." The word "tum," it means to meet, and it comes from local Vietnamese "cham." In standard Vietnamese "gap," so to meet. And the thing is that the vowel is nativized, so we can see that there is a diphthongization "tum," right? So it means that this is probably an old borrowing, but it has a borrowed tone. So, you know, it is clearly borrowing, but not from the vowel, but because of the tonal category. But take the second example, the word vang, which means shy. This has been incorporated into the A2 category. So this is a native tonal category of Malieng, A2. But the vowel is not nativized. It is not diphthongized, as is normally diphthongized in the low register, but it is centralized, which is another strategy that Malieng uses for borrowings. So we know that this is a borrowing not from the tonal category, but from the vowel, but we don't know where does it come from, because we have asked local Vietnamese and Nguyen speakers, and no one seems to recognize the cognate. So further research needs to be done to identify the origin of the words of the B2V tone, and also like in other borrowings incorporated into native tonal categories. So we have two elements of discussion here. The first one is that Proto-Vietic had a register contrast, but it was tones. So this is the registrogenesis first scenario, basically. So we base our hypothesis on the idea that all Vietic languages present register contrasts, but not all of them are tonal. So some still preserve glossal coda, some more still preserve final H. So this leads us to reconstruct register in Proto-Vietic, as Tan, our colleague, was defending in his thesis a couple of years ago. So the conclusion is that this registrogenesis first scenario makes us rethink the tonogenetic assumptions for the linguistic area and even for Vietnamese. So we have shown already how Vietnamese develop tones, right? So we have the coda collapse first, and then the onset collapse later. But with this scenario, this would be the development of the tones for Vietnamese. So we would have the onset collapse first. So we would have 2 tones in the beginning, and then they would triple into 6 tones, the current six-way tonal system of Vietnamese. And this was already suggested by as early as 2001 by Mark Alves, and also in Gurman's thesis, in Ryan's thesis. But this is also what we argue with the data from Malieng. And then this means that new paths of tonal development in Vietic languages should be explored. So, for example, Michel Ferlus, in his 98 paper, he was describing the tonal development of most of the Vietic languages with available data at the time as a tonogenetic first development. And he was explaining that some small tonation systems were explained through mergings of tonal categories and language contact. So these mergings are well documented in Vietnamese varieties across Vietnam. So take, for example, Saigon variety with 5 tonemes instead of 6 from Hanoi, right? But with our hypothesis, the explanation gets simplified. And that's because, according to us, Southern Vietic languages would have never developed complex tonation systems and then simplified them, which for Luz that would imply two innovations, right? So Southern Vietic languages are conservative languages, but with the explanation of a tonogenetic first origin, that would mean that they would have developed a complex tonal system. This is one innovation, and the second one would be simplifying that complex system into a simpler one. With this registrogenesis, first explanations, that would mean that they would have developed from the beginning a simple tonal system, and that's it. And these are the scenarios. So the first scenario is that registrogenesis was non-tonal in some of these Southern Vietic languages. So the examples are Arem, Malenkri, Mai, and Malieng. So in these cases, they are all registral, right? But the register is non-tonal. So in the case of Arem and Malenkri, they are registral and they never developed any tonogenesis process from the collapse of codas. And for Mai and Malieng, and this is the tones that Ferlus described. He described two tones for these languages. They would have tone A and B. And you can see that there are no register repositions because register would be a complete already process. And for Malieng and Hafong, we also did research on Hafong in August 24. That would be registrogenesis first scenario, where register was tonogenetic for the A category at least. So we can see that the A category, A1 and A2, are contrastive in tones, but then these languages developed the B and C categories out of coda contrast collapse and without register contrast, because the register contrast was already a completed process. So these are the two scenarios: the one with register as being tonogenetic, as the Malieng case, and the one with register non-being tonogenetic. And as a final conclusion, Malieng has 4 + 1, and this +1 is the word 1 tonemes, where one of these 4 C is being currently developed, and with three different origins that we have explained: registrogenesis, tonogenesis, and borrowing. And the second conclusion is that the registrogenesis first scenario for all the Vietic languages opens new descriptions, including for Vietnamese, and it opens also new lines of research for historical linguistics and for Proto-Vietic and Proto-Austroasiatic reconstructions. And these are the references, and we have some examples here with sound if you want to hear some examples with vowel A, in case you're curious, but we don't have time for that maybe. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Min and Albert. We have time for questions. I see that there's a question in the chat. Would you please give us a short history of Malieng people by Lynette Kev?
Yes, I can do that very briefly. So the Malieng, they are believed to have gone up. The Quang province is big. So it is reported that they would have been going up from Cham territory up northwards. We don't know any dates because we don't have any archaeology or anything like that. They used to live in the forest of Quang in the Zang River, and they were sedentarized 30 years ago. So from the forest into villages, into the villages that I showed. And their population has been always from 500 to 1,000 people, and now there's like 1,200 of them. They all speak Malieng, but mixed couples, they are transmitting only Vietnamese. So children speak Malieng, but not children of mixed couples. So that's a little bit the history that we know without going into very detail.
Thanks. So in the chat, there are questions that are not directly related. So I'm just looking.
I see them.
Yeah, I don't think there are any other questions directly linked. I have a question myself regarding the B2V category, right? The borrowed one.
Yes.
So you said that for the other tones, like the differences between A1 and A2, B1 and B2, etc., is mainly realized as a vowel quality contrast, right?
Yes.
So what about the difference between the native B2 and the B2V? Is it pitch? Like, is it that distinguishes the two mainly?
So we have both options actually. I mean, actually, vowel quality is always takes a role also in B2V. So B2V, it is analyzed as low register. So all vowels are modified according to low register, but they are modified in different ways. So you can see here in the presentation that we have two examples. This is the B2V category, right? And so we have on the left, we have chum, which we showed before. So chum means to meet, right? And we have mau. Chum, it has diphthong as a vowel, so you can see here how the vowel is diphthongized, right? But not for mau. For mau, the vowel is centralized, so you know, F1 is raised, and that's it. And you can hear them now. Here, the diphthong is not very audible, but we can see it in the spectrogram. So yeah, so our hypothesis is that chum is a older borrowing and mau is a newer one. So that's why the vowels are incorporated differently into the native system. But yeah, all vowels are modified, and then if we go to the B2 one, we see that you know, B1 has a clear a, but the B2 has a diphthongized one. Yeah. So this it's a little bit like the term one, right? And this mau is like just centralized and no diphthongization. I'm showing just one speaker here, but this was consistent among the 5 of them that were in the analysis.
Okay, thanks. Now, the reason why I was asking is because I've worked on a language that has voice quality contrasts, but that are not linked to former VUT contrast. And the cues are both pitch and voice quality. But then in borrowings, like borrowings have a distinct pitch, so that's why I was asking, like, about. So that's maybe the main difference between the B2, the native one, and the B2V. So they're mainly distinguished in terms of like from each other in terms of contour, right? Of pitch and contour.
Yeah, the voice quality, the creakiness, and then the pitch.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Sorry,
I would like to add that as you can, Nathaniel, B2, the native B2 and the B2V, they're also distinct by F0 contour. So do you remember that in the F0 slide, we also show that they have like different pattern of F0 contour. Yeah.
That's why it's kind of parallel to what I observed in that language called Idu, where like borrowings are distinguished like with pitch.
We should actually check the pitch contour of the borrowings, because we saw that the word bang, which we analyze as A2, but this A2 may be different than the native A2. So this is something that we have to do. We should.
Could you please go back to the F0 graph? We have some graph there.
Yeah.
The results. We can see the very clearly different between the B2 and B2V here in terms of F0 contour and F0 height. Yeah, for the borrowed tone, it's B2V. It has a low folding contour, and it has the lowest F0 height in general. While the B2, it has B2, it has a rising folding contour. You can see by the color here. Classification.
What about like, are native speakers conscious that this is like maybe a distinct category within the phonology, or are they conscious that maybe those are recent loans, or
no?
Not necessarily?
I mean, yes, for some of them, but not for the older ones. They don't identify them as borrowing.
I think this is why we suggest that there needs to be a perception study in the future, because we didn't have the time to do that.
Wow. A lot of interesting things to look forward. So I
Yes.
don't see any additional questions. So let's thank our speakers one more time for this very interesting talk. Thank you very much.
You. Thank you.
And okay, we'll have to switch to the next presentation. So please stop sharing, and then Ryan and Shane can start sharing and can start